Okay, so today we're going to dive deep into Algeria's tech scene.
Sounds fascinating.
They just launched their first ever homegrown computer operating system.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, built entirely on open source software.
Interesting.
Think of it like the foundation of their digital world, but built with a global toolkit.
Okay, so this isn't just some tech experiment, right? This is a calculated move.
Right. Yeah,
Algeria trying to position themselves in this rapidly evolving digital world.
absolutely.
Think David taking on the Goliaths of big tech.
Exactly. So
Oh.
can they pull it off? Can a nation not really known for its tech scene actually become a player in this whole open source revolution? That's what we're going to unpack today.
I'm excited to dig in.
Yeah, me too. Well, this new operating system is Linux-based, and it was a massive collaborative project across 10 Algerian universities.
Wow, 10 universities.
Yeah, spearheaded by Dr. Malay Tahar University.
That's impressive.
Now, Minister Kamel Badari, who oversees higher education and scientific research, had some pretty strong words at the launch.
Oh, really?
He said, and I quote, "This fully fledged Algerian system is the outcome of collaborative work between students and software researchers from multiple universities. The Linux distribution will enhance computer performance and safeguard our information systems."
Safeguarding their information system. So it sounds like they're not just aiming for a functional OS, but like a secure one.
Right.
Maybe even trying to reduce reliance on foreign tech.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He even added that this lays the groundwork for an open technology economy, hoping to spark like a wave of Algerian software startups built on this open foundation.
Wow, that's ambitious.
Yeah, so let's back up a second, think about how Wikipedia works.
Okay.
Constantly evolving and improving thanks to a global community of contributors.
Right.
That's open source in action. Now, imagine that same model applied to the very core of a computer system.
That's a big deal.
That's what Algeria is attempting here.
Wow. So Professor Issa Abed from Sétif University, who heads their National Committee for Open Source Software, really emphasized the benefits of this approach.
Like what?
Transparency, flexibility, and community-driven development. These are the pillars of open source, and they're all in play here.
Interesting. Okay, so why is the whole world, not just Algeria, suddenly obsessed with open source? The latest open source software market report paints a pretty clear picture.
Yeah, it's booming. Market is valued at almost $42 billion right now and projected to hit nearly $78 billion by 2028.
Wow, so that's a signal that the world is shifting away from closed systems and towards a more collaborative model for software development.
Yeah, and that's where Algeria's move gets really interesting.
Absolutely.
For Algeria, this could be a savvy economic play. No more hefty licensing fees for software.
Think of the potential savings.
Exactly.
Plus, open source means you can customize the software to your exact needs.
Right.
And with a global community of developers constantly scrutinizing and improving the code, you often get a more robust and secure system.
It's like a constant feedback loop.
Exactly.
So they're aiming to play in this global market, but also hoping to cultivate homegrown innovation. Imagine a whole generation of Algerian developers building on this open source foundation.
That brings us to the universities.
Right.
They're clearly the engine behind this whole project.
Right.
We've got some insights from Dr. Hana Saada, a lecturer at Algiers 1 University.
Okay, what does she have to say?
Well, she sees this operating system launch as proof of Algeria's potential.
It's a real-world application of university research, not just an academic exercise.
Totally. But Dr. Saada also points out some of the classic hurdles to innovation.
Oh, like what?
That disconnect between universities and actual industries, plus the bureaucratic red tape that can choke the life out of a good idea.
Those are pretty common challenges.
Right, so that makes you wonder, where does Algeria actually stand on the global innovation scale?
Yeah.
If they want to be a leader, not just a participant, can they overcome these obstacles?
That's a big question.
Well, according to the Global Innovation Index for 2024, they're currently ranked 115th out of 133 economies. And the Global Knowledge Index from 2021 puts them at 111th out of 154 countries.
Those rankings are a bit of a reality check, right? So this OS launch is a step forward, but there's a long road ahead.
Definitely, it raises a ton of questions.
Like what kind of questions?
It's like, can this operating system actually compete with the giants out there?
Yeah,
Windows, Mac OS. Those are some heavy hitters.
that's true.
Will people in Algeria even adopt this new system? And how will they navigate those innovation hurdles we talked about? Funding partnerships, a culture shift.
Yeah.
It's a complex equation.
It's a lot to consider.
This deep dive has already unearthed some fascinating contradictions.
Oh, yeah.
Algeria aiming for a top spot in a field. They're not exactly known for using a collaborative approach, in a world that often prizes secrecy.
Interesting.
Is there something these global indexes aren't capturing? We'll need to keep digging to find out.
Let's do it.
We've been exploring Algeria's bold move into open source software,
Right.
a nation not traditionally known for tech, trying to carve out a space
Yeah.
in a field dominated by giants.
It's a fascinating story.
It's a story full of contradictions, and it begs the question,
Yeah, what is it?
can they actually pull this off?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
And to answer it, we need to look beyond the initial excitement of this OS launch and delve into the nitty-gritty
The details.
of what it takes to foster a thriving tech ecosystem.
We talked about some pretty dismal global rankings in the last part.
Right.
If they want to be a serious contender, they've got some climbing to do.
They do. It all comes down to concrete steps
Uh-huh.
and strategic investments.
So like what?
One critical area, as always, is funding research and development,
Okay.
especially in software engineering.
Right.
It doesn't happen in a vacuum. It requires serious financial backing.
And not just government funding, right?
Yeah.
To really make a splash, they'll need to attract
Yeah.
private investment, venture capital.
Exactly, the kind of money that fuels innovation hubs around the world.
But how do they attract that kind of investment?
Well, they need to create a climate that makes investors, both local and international, take notice. Clear regulations, a solid legal framework, and a culture that embraces risk-taking
I see.
and rewards those who push boundaries. That's the recipe for a successful tech scene.
Okay, so it's not just about throwing money at the problem.
Mm.
It's about using those funds strategically.
Couldn't agree more. And this is where Dr. Saida's insights about collaboration come into play.
Oh, right. That disconnect she mentioned between universities and industries, that needs to change.
It does. It's like having all these brilliant minds
Yeah.
cooking up amazing things in the lab, but no way to get those innovations out into the real world.
So what can they do?
Imagine if Algerian universities were actively partnering with tech companies,
Okay.
startups, even government agencies to develop open source solutions tailored to specific needs.
That kind of collaborative ecosystem could be a game changer.
Absolutely, not just for the tech sector, but for the entire country.
And let's not forget about the human element.
Right.
We could talk about funding infrastructure partnerships all day long, but ultimately innovation is driven by people.
People with passion, skills, and a willingness to push the boundaries of what's possible.
Exactly. So Algeria needs to cultivate a new generation
They do.
of developers, engineers, entrepreneurs who are excited about open source
Right.
and ready to contribute.
That means revamping education,
Okay.
creating more hands-on learning opportunities, and establishing mentorship programs that connect aspiring innovators with experienced guides.
So it's about nurturing a culture of learning experimentation and open knowledge sharing.
Exactly, a cultural shift that goes hand in hand with any financial investment or policy change.
I see. So we've been focusing on Algeria's internal landscape,
Right.
but let's zoom out for a moment.
Okay.
How does this open source leap fit into the larger global picture?
This is where it gets really interesting. We're witnessing a global shift towards open source,
Really?
not just in software, but in various industries.
It's about democratizing access to knowledge, tools, and resources.
Exactly. And it's not just about individual nations going it alone.
Right.
There's a growing international movement around open source, with organizations, communities, and even governments working together across borders.
So this creates a network of shared knowledge and expertise, a global commons where everyone can potentially benefit.
Exactly. And for a country like Algeria, plugging into this network is crucial.
It's like joining a massive brain trust,
Right.
gaining access to a vast pool of talent resources and accumulated wisdom.
They don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Right, they can learn from the successes and failures of others who have walked this path before.
Exactly. And there's a soft power element at play here.
Like what?
By embracing open source,
Right.
Algeria is positioning itself as a forward-thinking nation,
Okay.
a collaborator, not an isolationist.
So it sends a clear signal to the world.
It does.
They're open for business, open to partnerships, and eager to contribute to the global knowledge pool.
Absolutely. But let's not sugarcoat things.
Okay.
The world of open source isn't without its challenges and potential downsides. One of the biggest concerns is sustainability. Developing and maintaining open source software requires continuous effort and resources.
And who fits the bill? We've talked about government funding and private investment,
Right.
but there needs to be a solid long-term strategy
They're
to
dense.
ensure these projects don't just fizzle out.
Another challenge is the risk of fragmentation.
What do you mean?
With so many open source projects popping up,
Okay.
you can easily end up with a fractured landscape where different systems don't communicate effectively.
So compatibility issues duplicated efforts, lack of interoperability.
Exactly. Those are all potential headaches.
They need to find ways to encourage collaboration and coordination,
They do.
not just within Algeria, but across the global open source community.
And then, of course, there's the elephant in the room.
Which is this?
Competition, the tech world, is dominated by massive companies,
Right.
many of whom have built their empires on proprietary software.
So can a country like Algeria, even with a fantastic open source OS, really compete with these giants?
It's a classic David versus Goliath scenario.
It'll take some strategic maneuvering
It will.
to avoid getting squashed.
Perhaps it's not about direct competition,
Okay.
but about carving out niche markets, finding specialized applications where open source shines. Or maybe it's about leveraging the agility and flexibility of open source to adapt quickly to emerging trends. Being nimble can be a huge advantage in the fast-paced tech world.
This deep dive has uncovered a fascinating interplay
Right.
between technology, economics, global power dynamics.
It's a story that's still being written.
We've explored the nuts and bolts of Algeria's open source leap,
Yeah,
the challenges, the opportunities.
we have.
But there's one more crucial aspect to consider:
Oh, which,
the social and cultural implications of this shift.
right, how this impacts people's lives.
We'll delve into those in the final part.
That's good.
It's about how open source is not just reshaping technology, but changing how we think about knowledge community and the very fabric of our interconnected world. Stay tuned, because this conversation is far from over.
I can't wait.
We've been on quite a journey with this deep dive.
We have.
From the nuts and bolts of Algeria's new operating system to the global forces driving the open source movement.
Absolutely.
But there's one final layer we need to explore.
Oh, right, the human side of the story.
Exactly.
How does this open source shift impact society and culture at large? That's where things get really profound.
Yeah, it feels like we're moving away from knowledge being something that's hoarded and controlled to something that's shared and accessible to everyone.
It is a big shift.
What happens when the barriers to education, innovation, and even entrepreneurship start to crumble?
It's a pretty radical shift. Imagine students in Algeria, or anywhere for that matter, having access to the same high-quality learning materials as students at the most prestigious universities.
Or think about aspiring entrepreneurs who can build their businesses using powerful open source tools without being crippled by expensive software licenses.
Exactly. It's like leveling the playing field.
Right, giving individuals more power and hopefully leading to a more inclusive society.
It's not just about access to information. Either open source fosters a culture of collaboration and shared ownership.
So you're no longer just a consumer, you're a potential contributor.
Precisely, when you're working on an open source project, you're part of a global community,
Developers, designers, users.
all working towards a common goal.
And in that process, you share your ideas, skills, and passions.
Right, and in turn, you benefit from the collective wisdom of the community.
That kind of collaborative spirit can be incredibly powerful.
It breaks down silos, sparks innovation, and creates a sense of shared purpose.
And maybe even changes how we tackle those massive problems facing the world today.
Like what?
Climate change, poverty, disease. These are complex issues that demand global cooperation.
They do, and open source provides a framework for that kind of cooperation. Imagine a global open source platform for climate modeling,
Okay.
where scientists from every corner of the world can contribute their expertise and insights, or an open source database of medical research, making it easier to spot patterns, develop treatments, and share best practices across borders.
It's almost like open source has the potential to connect us on a deeper level, to empower us,
Yeah.
and to help us build a better future together.
It's a powerful idea.
But like any powerful tool, there are potential downsides, ethical dilemmas we can't ignore.
So we have to ask ourselves if knowledge is freely available.
Yeah.
How do we ensure it's used responsibly and ethically? How do we prevent bad actors from exploiting open source platforms for harmful purposes?
And how do we make sure this whole open source ecosystem is sustainable?
Right.
We talked about funding, but it's more than that. How do we keep these communities vibrant and engaged for the long haul?
It's a challenge.
How do we incentivize contributions without leading to burnout or creating a system that only benefits those with ample resources?
These are tough questions.
Yeah, and there are no easy answers.
Nope. But it's crucial to have these conversations as we navigate this open source revolution.
So we need to strike the right balance between openness and responsibility, between collaboration and individual recognition, between pushing the boundaries of innovation and making sure the whole system is built to last.
It's about ensuring that open source fulfills its true potential to empower people,
Yeah.
advance knowledge, and create a more just and sustainable world.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are the key takeaways for you, our listener? What can you do with all this information?
First and foremost, remember that open source is more than just lines of code.
Okay.
It's a philosophy, a way of thinking, a movement that has the potential to reshape not just the tech world, but society itself.
It challenges our traditional notions of ownership, control, and competition.
It does. It encourages us to embrace transparency, collaboration, and shared purpose.
And it reminds us that the future of innovation isn't about building walls, but about tearing them down.
Absolutely. We've only just scratched the surface of what's possible with open source,
Yeah.
and it's up to all of us to shape its trajectory.
So as you go about your day, ask yourself,
Hmm.
how can I apply these open source principles in my own work, in my community, in my life? How can I contribute to this movement and ensure it benefits everyone?
That's the challenge and the opportunity we all face in this exciting new era.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We've explored Algeria's ambitious leap into the world of open source, uncovering a story about technology, economics, and the evolving nature of knowledge itself. Keep exploring, stay curious, and until next time, keep diving deep.